Hello and welcome to GW Prime Live. I hope you had enjoyed conversations and discussions yesterday on range of topics associated with Indian geospatial industry. Today we want to discuss about future geospatial ecosystem. As we understand that geospatial industry has been evolving at a rapid pace, and so has its impact in various walks of economy, society, and environment. In fact, the integration of geospatial information with engineering, IT, autonomous sectors, which are probably the sectors redefining the digital age. All this integration is possible by embedding our capabilities into those workflows, as well as supporting those workflows to be more productive and efficient. That causes a lot of disruption within the ecosystem of geospatial. But that disruption is not negative, but a lot positive. And that is what is making this geospatial ecosystem more broad, comprehensive, and futuristic. To discuss this topic, today we have a guest, Dr. Zaffar. Dr. Zaffar is an expert, a strategic consultant, someone who has spent a lot of time and energy in developing strategies for national mapping and its role into the national development, how this ecosystem is developing, evolving, integrating, and actually conversing with sustainable development goals. So to take this discussion forward, we'll like to have next 20-25 minutes discussion with Dr. Zaffar. Welcome, Dr. Zaffar.
Thank you, Sanjay, for the kind invitations. How are you?
I'm doing well, and how about you? I'm sorry we bothered you so late in the evening. You are in Melbourne somewhere, which is about 10 p.m.
No worries. We are global citizens. It's great to connect at any point of time to discuss the passion of our industry, which we learn from you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Zaffar, tell us, what do you think about this future geospatial ecosystem? What it is all about?
That's a very good question. As we transform, as you mentioned, with the digital transformation, the future geospatial ecosystem is an extension of our spatial data infrastructure. What we see is the involvement of the ecosystem with various actors, and everyone has got a role to play. And that's where the ecosystem becomes powerful. The ability to collaborate, the ability to have shared infrastructure, even commercial models for markets in order to bring their products, especially from the private sector, to bring a competitive environment for this ecosystem to share and thrive and be able to bring on-time decisions and real-time decisions through this concept. And the role of private sector, especially I would like to focus, is around the wider pool of technical expertise, the cost sharing, increase innovation potential, risk mitigation, market-driven innovation, greater susceptibility to change, and shorter time to market. At the moment, the SDIs have done their work, but they are not ready to embrace the new innovations with the fourth industrial, and now we speak about the fifth industrial revolution, which is also on the sustainability. So therefore, the ecosystem provides an opportunity for every actor, government, academia, industry, and all markets and users to interact and thrive from it.
Dr. Jafar, you talked about shared infrastructure. So, what are the most important infrastructures which can actually connect to the geospatial infrastructure?
Excellent. The concept of shared infrastructure is similar to the Uber rides that we do shared trips, and therefore it allows for people to optimize their investment on infrastructure. We recently have transformed from building based infrastructure to cloud infrastructure that provides us an opportunity to take advantage of software as a service, data as a service, and in the ecosystem, we are talking about model as a service, analytics as a service. So, therefore, the ecosystem approach is to provide this infrastructure where you have the opportunity to co invest and also be able to participate so that you are able to take advantage of a massive investment that has taken place with a smaller portion or the actor that you would play.
So, we talked about, say, service models. Primarily, you mean to say that all this convergence of the IT engineering infrastructure and co-sharing those capabilities with geospatial infrastructure is allowing you to deliver services. So we are moving from products to services model. That's what you mean?
Exactly. So at the moment, what we do is we publish our data, and then that data, especially geospatial, is consumed by different IT services. So that says as a data as a service. What we are talking the future is about analytics. It's about publishing the algorithms. It's about sharing the experience, sharing the products that can be consumed, and you can only look at decisions, the answers from the ecosystem, rather than taking time to establish the infrastructure, to establish the data, where you are now able to subscribe and be able to take answers from it. And this is the sort of the future thinking that allows for especially small to medium enterprises, the businesses that can innovate to participate in the ecosystem.
So when we get into these services models, how do you see that geospatial services or analytics or insights are going to support uh, sustainable development goals?
When you look at sustainability, so that number one, I am not going to invest on a huge building to hold my data farms, right? Currently, we
Yeah,
do. A lot
yeah.
of energy comes through that. So here you're saving electricity, the cost of the infrastructure. Of course, it's a global things which has energy, but you only participate a component of it. So first of all, sustainability comes across on saving energy, saving resources, saving infrastructure costs straight away in this shared model. But also the opportunity here is to learn and also contribute on your experiences on certain data and decisions, which also saves time and man hours through the collaborative approach that the future industry ecosystem offers.
So what I gather from you is that for making use of the geospatial information, you actually don't need to invest into huge amount of capabilities of data clouds and the software capabilities, but just start using it, and it's kind of democratization of the geospatial analytics as a capacity which can be used at the remotest and grassroots levels.
Exactly, you spoke, you nailed that, Sanjay. Because at the moment, what we are looking at is also an opportunity for least developed and developing countries to participate in this ecosystem approach. When shared infrastructures are available, people are able to publish the data and be able to take advantage of that data. Of course, this is a future vision, and also with limited bandwidths in the future should be able to take advantage of this ecosystem approach. One good example currently I can provide is the initiative of Digital Earth Africa. The Australian government invented or invested on the Digital Earth Australia. And from that experience, they partnered and worked through various world leaders to establish the Digital Earth Africa initiative. So those initiatives happens with a lot of manpower and the ability and the technology of the day to make it happen in the concepts around the base
So
infrastructure
how,
in developing countries.
yeah, so how, Jafar, how this entire, change has occurred, and how do you see that the private companies are actually adapting this kind of, innovative approach of services? Their business models are changing, their, deliveries models are changing, their customer support is changing. So what kind of change this has brought into the geospatial industry or the private sector companies?
I would see this as a digital ecosystem, no different to what is available on the World Wide Web, as we what we see on the digital ecosystem. Like its ability to bring different information in a shorter span of time in order to seek those answers, right? For example, I always give the example explaining a simple ecosystem approach is if someone goes to a search engine and says parks in Melbourne, the ecosystem is able to interpret that parks is a geometry and Melbourne is a geometry and be able to look at this data and come up with on the fly conflation and ready answers that does not exist physically anywhere in the web. So that means it's all derived through this online real time artificial intelligence and machine learning based approach to give these answers. So where the business opportunity is to develop applications in energy, in renewable, to take this information and be able to work with domain experts. And Sanjay, you're an evangelist, and for the past 27 years, your organization has promoted geospatial usage, right? And the users slowly understand and come on board, and I laud the efforts that Geospatial World has done to bring the community, and now more and more user communities you're bringing into your forums. So this is where I think the power of ecosystem will be able to reflect that the users will be able to use more geospatial information from the confined boundaries that is at the moment present on just visualizing the geospatial data. So that's
So
where
you
the
are you're
will invest.
so you're in a way saying that the power of geospatial analytics is being commoditized. It's now a commodity which
Yeah.
is available through an infrastructure, which is available as a service. You can use it at a time of convenience. You want to use it at just use it for consumption rather than unnecessarily getting into the production and development part of it.
Yeah. Production, someone has to still produce, but it will be
Right.
limited producers that will bring their data to this marketplace, right? Geospatial ecosystem marketplace. So, for example, if there is a LiDAR company that wants to capture, it is able to provide its high quality data. Like how we all walk in the superstores on the aisles, we like to look at a product, a commodity, but there are different brands. So, if it is high resolution 5 centimeter data, 10 centimeter aerial data, or 20 centimeter, there is a variety of options in the marketplace for the consumers to use this information through subscription models. So slowly this becomes a sort of a eBay sort of platform for geospatial in a more high level concept.
Yeah. So let's take this conversation a little in a direction of the user focus. And I have the great pleasure to welcome my colleague Bert Claessens. Bert Claessens is the vice president of Bert. Please welcome. Have a seat, please. So Dr. Jaffer. So
Hi, Bert.
Bert, Bert brings a lot of experience of telecom sector. What I have done for 20 plus years in the field of geospatial, Bert has actually done kind of policy governance and regulatory affairs in the telecom sector and has been very closely connected with geospatial sector as a consumer. But what today I want to look at, drawing the parallels of the ecosystems. So how telecom sector has become a kind of service models, like it's a commodity today. So, but what do you think about the telecom sector making this communication capability as a kind of commodity, so fast, so voluminous, and so cheap?
Um, Thank you for inviting me, Sanjay. And first of all, I would like to greet Dr. Zaffar. And indeed, we are global citizens. Last time we met was in Delft, not so long ago. And I agree with Dr. Zaffar that all those trends like cloudification and softwareization, virtualization of networks makes telecom much cheaper. It also changes completely the ecosystem of telecom. And because software companies enter the telecom market, telecom markets enter the cloud market, and geospatial plays a very important role in that. It's not only in network design, that happens fully automated nowadays. Geospatial is also in positioning, navigation, and timing. Resilience of PNT is very important nowadays, and but also the operational aspect of telecom networks changes with this virtualization, and digital twins is comes hand in hand with all the trends that Dr. Zaffar has mentioned earlier, and this way geospatial is actually, I think, the big engine under the hood of telecommunications, like it is in many sectors. And I'm from the telecom. I was from the telecom sector, and I never heard people talk about geospatial. And I think we need to bring those together. It is indeed not investing in IT. It is not investing in cloud. It is bringing together the ecosystems that are already existing. And it's not an invention of me. It's like I heard once Professor Marcelos from the Greek telecom regulator say, we are back to ICT. No,
Yeah.
we talk about telecom and IT, but one generation earlier we talked about ICT, and that is back. We need to merge those two sectors again.
Yep. So thank you very much, Bert. Jafar, what do you think about connectivity and convergence of geospatial and telecommunication? Ultimately, what you talk to us about, the data as a service, or insight as a service, or intelligence as a service. Most of the people who are involved with SDGs, or rather who are actually working on the ground, will be using that through the cell phones. And that, I think, that's very important connect, or rather the power. So where geospatial is powering telecom, but then the telecom is powering so much to geospatial as well, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work need to be done, especially on innovation, especially the transmission of the geospatial data. But
Yeah.
currently, we spoke about linked data, where we use resource description files, where we are able to wrap it and send it across a lower bandwidth, and that enables to unpack and work through. I think when we compare the internet, what we had at least 3 years ago, and the speed that we have now with fiber optic cables connected to the homes is quite good, and that works very well for the developed countries. But for least developed, underdeveloped, and infrastructurally challenged countries is where the innovation has to take place, especially on the data interoperability, the ability to transmit geometry packets across this internet, and that's where we are able to look at lower transmission models and formats, that the ability to take into the consumer level to unpack, process, and provide that information. And that's where you see more innovative approach comes into the analytics side rather than the production side, because we used to spend a lot of time in organizing data. I always say 70% of the cost of geospatial is in capturing and organizing, and we are going to save that. That
Absolutely.
will form the sustainable development growth.
I couldn't agree more in this case, because all this technology innovation has kind of reduced the cost heavily. I, as a user, doesn't need to actually set up so much of investment upfront before starting using. I can start using it straight away, right? So
Yeah.
that's what is the big change which has been brought by this whole innovation and integration of the ecosystem. So, Dr. Jaffar, apart from telecom, do you also see any specific direct and heavy impact of any other ecosystem in geospatial, say energy or
Yeah, definitely. I think now is the era of climate change, renewable energies. That's the biggest growth sector that we will all agree, renewables. And now what we are trying to do, especially even from private sector, from governments, we are looking for where this renewable energy can be extracted, but also be able to transmit that energy to the main grids, right? And that's where the power of geospatial comes in, because that requires high resolution data, that requires a lot of analytics in order for us to find the optimal distribution of this. Because at the moment, as we speak, in India, it's summer, and now over here in Melbourne, it's going to be winter, where the heaters will be turned on and where the coolers will be turned on. Where in the ecosystem, the approach is to look at how the buildings are able to look at energy consumption and be able to directly or indirectly interpret the energy consumptions through high power thermal sensors observed in night or day. So this will provide us understanding of the load distribution, because there's a lot of a dynamic nature of the energy usage, right? Especially in the urban sector, because people move in buildings and move out of the buildings. So this is where I think the demand on the load could come through innovative approaches. And again, large firms on data captures can capture those imageries, and then the startups can bring some very innovative models in order to transform this demand supply things into the marketplace. And then where in we will be able to tap the energy resources, be it solar farms or wind farms. How do we bring that energy and on demand be able to supply it, because consumer dynamics has changed, and it's very, very difficult to catch up and understand from a electricity distribution.
I think what you brought up, Dr. Jaffar, was network centric, grid systems, which would be huge, a step forward towards sustainability, because we'll conserve so much of energy and save that from being wasted and use that for greater good. So moving forward towards the policy and institutional governance, which has been your expertise. So in looking at this ecosystem and the future ecosystem, where do you see, Dr. Jafar, that the national governments or the national mapping agencies can actually take advantage of these initiatives and innovations to bring to the people huge amount of data which they have actually collected over the years, as well as maybe invest more into the real time or rather near real time qualitative authoritative data which can be used by the multiple, like probably millions and billions.
I think the role of government, and especially national mapping agencies, more and more in the future with the concept of ecosystem, will change their role from producers to regulators. The producers will become the citizens, the private sector, where they are able to bring in high quality data at cheaper rates in a competitive environment. From a policy side, where I see the challenges is, how do we govern this? Because World Wide Web, no one governs it. Like ecosystem is self-governed. It's not mandated and governed. But of course, you have regulatory through from different governments in order to manage. I think the role the government plays is especially around the data licensing. How do we bring this data for consumption? Because still we need to make some remarkable improvement for these e-transactions, for a digital marketplace, for data for the consumers, even if it is foundation open data or anyone is swiping the credit card to download a LiDAR data for a particular portion of the area of interest, for even a renewable energy market to find out where they want to locate their wind turbines. So the licensing and legal aspects of this, especially for electronic transactions, that's a challenge, and that's an area that needs a lot of focus. While technological advancements and other maturity with the fifth industrial revolutions are available, the key challenges is on how can policy, as you and I know, as policy practitioners, you only bring in a policy when there is a disruption. So I think this
Yeah,
is where I
yeah.
think licensing, data licensing, and e-transactions, there's not much maturity because geospatial is not a big consumer market as other electronic goods. So I think that's where a lot of work needs to be done for a ecosystem to work in its full cycle.
So, but Dr. Jaffer says that the role of geospatial agencies will move towards being regulator than the producer. Whereas in Europe, most of the geospatial agencies are very at a mature level of data production, and they invest heavily into the data production. How do you see this trend changing in terms of transition of national mapping agencies like Cadastre or BKG or other ordnance survey, where would it be wise for them as well to get into the more of regulatory role or continue in the production and at the same time bring some more regulatory roles?
I could speak as a former regulator. I could also speak as a more liberal economist, maybe.
Yeah.
True regulation only comes in place if there is a market failure. And I think we, as Europeans, we can be proud of what is happening in Netherlands, Germany, in UK. And I think standardization is very important. Open standards, so that data can be interoperable, can be used widely. Data should be made available. In Europe, for example, we work on data spaces and easier sharing of data. I think that is where we should start. And if there remains a market failure, maybe we should enforce that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. With this, I really want to thank both our experts, Dr. Zafar, especially you brought a whole range of uh, comprehensivity of future geospatial ecosystem and how this geospatial ecosystem is going to be playing a critical role in, or rather actually is playing in right now a critical role in implementation and monitoring of sustainable development goals. And thank you very much for your great contributions in various walks of evangelism too, by the way. You do a lot of evangelism as well. And thanks for taking your time out to join our viewers today. And thank you very much, Bert, for chipping in at last minute. We wanted to just bring it more European perspective to the geospatial knowledge infrastructure and the future geospatial ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay and Bert.
Welcome back. It was a great interaction with Dr. Jaffer on the future geospatial ecosystems. Now we go forward and discuss with our guest on Indian space industry growth opportunities. As you know, India is emerging as power in the field of space. It has made several reforms and attracted and integrated commercial sector in its ecosystem. As India is hub of startups, entrepreneurship, and innovation, not only in the field of technology, but amazingly in the field of applications at the grassroots level. The space and remote sensing has been at the core of our development strategies. And with commercialization, this is something which is scaling those applications through the commercial sector. To discuss about Indian space and the growth opportunities, we have guests with us. Let's welcome Kranti Chand, who is representing Dhruva Space. Hi, Kranti. Welcome to the show.
A pleasure to join in, and congratulations on the anniversary of the GWA Foundation.
Thank you, Kranti. And we also have a guest, Soumya Misra, who is the founder of CISIR. So these two gentlemen, very young, entrepreneurs, representing the startup community of India in the field of space. So let's have some, next 25 minutes, we're going to discuss about the possibilities, feasibilities, and the role of India in the space sector. So, Kranti, what do you think about the Indian space sector?
No, I think one of the comments that I was discussing with one of the investors in the last week, in terms of the industrial revolutions that happened across the centuries, in certain cases, we in certain ways feel missed out on certain of these waves. And I think one of the key moments in the growth of the Indian ecosystem has been that we've established the space as a vertical. We've built satellites, we've built launch vehicles, we've done everything in-house for the last 20, 30 years, that there is a foundation that had been laid by the enterprise like these. That provides us a jump board that none of the other generations had previously when there was industrial revolutions happening across the world. So you have a jump board of having a foundation laid out by the government institutions over the last 50 years. And then you have a talent pool of engineers coming in. I think the young generation thriving and, wanting with the hunger to do and build new technologies. The answer is that you have foundation, you have the right people. Now is India's opportunity to be actually a major part of a wave. And that fourth industrial revolution, and specifically on the part of space, both on manufacturing, on the upstream in terms of rockets or satellites, versus the downstream application building in terms of softwares and enabled solutions, is going to be very, very a lucrative opportunity because of the bedrock that we already have. So it's opening up of those regulatory doors that is happening right now in the ecosystem. Provision of certain base data sets to build some narrative around it will take a good way. And I think that's happening over the last 3 years, which gives this as the moment of the space industry for the Indian entrepreneurs.
So kind of industrial revolution is actually boosting that space revolution. Well, before we continue our discussions, I would like to welcome our third guest, Sethu, who has just joined from somewhere in Europe. Sethu, are you there?
Yes. Hey, Sanjay. Thanks for hosting me. I'm there. I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, wonderful. So, Shishir, Soumya, What do you think about the space revolution? And I think you have been brought up into that whole environment of space. So, what do you
Yes.
think about the space revolution today?
Firstly, before all of this, good evening, sir, and congratulations on the 27th anniversary. And may you see another 27, 30, 40, 50 years with Geospatial World. Coming back to the question, I think in India, uh, like especially like post independence, there's been a certain trajectory that all industries have followed up till the liberalization of the early 1990s. A lot of the heavy lifting work in terms of infrastructure was just the society was structured in such a way that only the government and government related authorities could get into it. Post liberalization, private sector started coming in into different aspects, and today, like another 30 years hence from liberalization, we are at a place where we can stand on the shoulders of not just like all the infra and the capabilities built by the government organization, but also the financial channels that have been opened up because of privatization. And now we are in a place where more private companies can come and work in space sector. Like Kranti said, it could be in downstream application or upstream hardware or anything in between. So now exploitation of this opportunity at scale can be done by a plethora of private companies. I think especially around the geospatial front, which is more aligned with the downstream application. We already have a lot of mature companies who have been working in
Yeah,
this industry for
yeah.
10 plus years. Now especially the liberalization of the space and defense policies, and uh, policies that such as IDEX and ATI and such, which basically encourage new startups to truly innovate at a fundamental level. These things will propel the entire Indian ecosystem to work in conjunction with each other and
Yeah.
develop new technologies in India. And it's already happening. Like for example, Dhruva is a good example over here, right? Like one of the first, I would say probably the first in indigenous company in India which has built satellite bus capability. That's a very very unique achievement.
So, Soumya, thank you very much for that. So, I'll come back to you very soon. Setu, you are a European company, and it's a very successful startup. So, what do you think about Indian space sector from the lens of Europe?
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay, firstly inviting me to this forum. Yeah, I think, let's say like India has been going through on two sort of phases, right? Let's say I would say somewhere around 2018 or until 2018, the Indian space sector has largely been driven, barring a couple of companies, as Soumyan mentioned, largely by the governmental sector, and in that sense, India as a market has been, at least from the European side, has been very close, right? I mean, I remember, during my good old AAC days, where we always used to have this discussion that we need to start looking into India as a market. This was post 2018. But then every time we started looking into India, then the biggest roadblock was the biggest customer on the seller in India was actually government related entities, right? Like ISRO was the biggest sort of the seller, and then government of India was like potentially biggest buyer. So that did not let a lot of companies, at least globally, to come in and scale at mass. But post 2018, slowly, things started going upwards, where a lot of exciting companies that are there today started coming up. And also, I think there's been a fundamental shift in the thought process from the governmental segment as well, which ensure that relevant policies are being made. And of course, there's a lot of work to do, but still, I think it's going in the right direction. And that's why now you see there's a lot of tie-ups happening. You see so many European companies coming into India, tying up with all these exciting startups, which sort of opened up the market, right? I feel, at least from my European lens, US is still the biggest single market for space. I think maybe in the next decade, it might be India, which would be the next single market for space industry.
That's very promising, Setu. that you believe that India in next 1 decade will be one of the largest single market. What Indian companies can bring to you to attract more in more of engagement and partnership with you in India? And what are the key sectors in India which you want to focus on in terms of the market?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like Reorbit fundamentally believes in ecosystems. I mean, that has been the fundamental sort of guiding star for Reorbit, and we internally talk a lot about if there is something, don't reinvent, just partner with those
Yeah.
people. And to that extent, again, Dhruva Space is a classic example, and also Soumyan's sister is a classic example where we can collaborate. Because fundamentally, our core expertise lies in the system architecture, satellite system architecture, and then you could start bringing the expertise of subsystems that Dhruva is doing, and also the payloads that Soumyan is doing. So in that sense, we are today looking at partnerships where we could leverage basically everything that's hardware in India, and then we could bring in the system architecture and the software expertise, so that it'll be a win-win for every one of us. And also, I think it goes quite well, with the governmental policy also to make in India. So we are actually looking to come into India and build everything in India, so that it could be fully localized in that sense. So that's how we are looking at, and there'll be. I mean, I'm sure, Sanjay, we had a couple of announcements recently about us selling the platform to SatSure and also partnering with SatSure. There'll be a couple more coming quite soon as well about our presence in India.
Oh, that's very encouraging. You are already in the works of partnership with some of the companies. That's very encouraging. So, Soumya, tell me something that what are the top three markets, like industry verticals, which would be in short term kind of big opportunity for the space revolution or the space startups or companies like you?
Right. So at Sisir Radar, our focus is more on remote sensing payloads, especially with the synthetic aperture radar. So any sort of remote sensing, the first foremost market that will come to everyone's mind is defense. Defense, and not just for remote sensing, but for any sort of space technology, defense will have the appetite for more innovative and out there solutions, which once they are matured, they can be commercialized more. Apart from that, with respect to space, telecom and any sort of communication is always there. And thirdly, I would say, like for example, remote sensing data can be used across industries, like from finance to agriculture to maritime monitoring. Everywhere there is a lot of impact, but in this I would probably think that the financial sector is probably a hot market where satellite data can be very easily used. Apart from that, in the other aspects of space, like with rocketry, especially with companies like Agnikul and Skyroot building cheaper and rockets for which are very well tuned for like doing nano satellite launches. I think cheap launch solutions is also something that India can get into. Like today, for example, SpaceX offers a cheaper solution than ISRO slightly, but
So,
tomorrow
so
I'm sure
basically, you're
Agnikul
looking
can
at
break that.
So basically, what you're saying is that defense is one big market which can drive further the innovation, and then the financial services is the market which can consume a lot of remote sensing and Earth observation data, and then the India could be also a big market, or rather big source for actually providing cheap and more reliable launch services, ultimately bringing down the cost of the space infrastructure and the space applications. Kranti, what do you think about is for Dhruva are the three key areas of growth?
No, I think backing what Setu and Soumya had just mentioned, I think sovereign assets are going to be the key. I think there is still a lot of drive among the emerging countries of owning sovereign assets, establishing their space constellations, and having the data sovereignty. So for a company like Dhruva, which builds satellite platforms and services people with being their partner or trusted partner in terms of putting a space asset and getting the data out of it. I think that's sovereign asset aspiration of India, and the clout that India is trying to wield over some of the Southeast Asian nations and Middle East as a bilateral relationship where the products can also be pushed into those markets is going to be the first and the foremost opportunity. I think the second one, I think slightly a run up, but I think India already has a lot of data sets that are available, whether it is from a remote sensing perspective, NRSC data sets that are now made freely available at 5-meter resolution, or the whole program where agricultural data sets, the weather data sets and everything. Now there is API access that is being built, but people have to come up and build solutions that integrates these data sets to derive a holistic decision support structure that people can utilize. Some way like where Soumya mentioned about the finance industry, how can we integrate the weather data sets with the soil moisture patterns and then, come up with solutions. So I think there is immediate nature where there is a requirement for supporting some of these technology developments at startup and at industry level, where everyone is building those prototypes and trying to establish a solution to come out into the market. Once you start supporting them over the next 2 to 3 years, I think the access to the data and building of those solutions will make it more scalable 5 years down the lane, because India brings in that varied data sets of being in a cold temperatures of mountainous regions versus cold regions of the Thar Desert, at the same time the hot sand dunes of the Thar, and then going back into the down south in terms of the vast geographic difference that is brought in, and the Indian Ocean region. So there is treasure trove of data that drives in AI and other solutions. So I think those two will be the drivers to the new age society, and that will yield to a third vertical, which will be the actual revenue gainer for the whole of industry.
So interestingly, you brought in the concept of the sovereign assets. Why are sovereign assets so important in this geopolitical situation? What do you think about these sovereign assets? Setu, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so one of the key, let's say, principles with Reorbit is actually to provide sovereign assets, and that's why we talk about ecosystems, right? I mean, traditionally, if you look at the way space ecosystem has been evolving in the last 70 years, largely the space data or the data that's generated by space, assets are largely controlled by 3 countries, maybe 4 countries, and now today in today's geopolitical situation and fast evolving allies and force, having this access or the control of this data by 4 or 3 countries is actually quite dangerous. Therefore, I think a lot of countries have today recognized that space data is the new oil or the new gold that everyone wants to have control of their space data by themselves. So we hear a lot of sovereign capabilities. In fact, a lot of the countries that we talk today are actually not bothered about heritage, not bothered about the price points, which are the typical things that you always hear when you talk to traditional buyers of satellite infrastructure. But today they're actually more emphasizing on, can you bring the sovereignty into the country? Can you give us the control over the data? So it's largely driven by the geopolitical situation today, Sanjay.
What do you think about this sovereign assets, and is it driving the huge investments by the government in the space sector?
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, for in the past and for in the future as well, space will always be deeply tied to defense. It's a very critical infrastructure at the end of the day. Even if you take just one vertical, which is remote sensing, having access to your own sources of data is extremely critical. And not just like one source of data, like having just one hyperspectral satellite or one SAR satellite doesn't cut it. Because if you want, whether it's for strategic use case or commercial use case, you want the ability to map all of India at the very least on a daily basis. Now, like at low Earth orbits, that would require at least somewhere between 200 to 400 satellites to be able to do that. If you want to map every part of India on a daily basis, right? And this is just for one country. So you need 200 odd or 300 odd satellites dedicated for a nation, and every other country which has either the financial wherewithal or the technical capability to do that will also focus similarly to build that kind of infrastructure. And especially like geopolitical climates, they keep changing, so you can never, there are no permanent allies or no permanent enemies, right? So if your critical data and the data source is controlled by some other nation, that basically gives the leverage away, whatever political or geopolitical
So
leverage you have.
basically, it's a kind of very critical information ecosystem which we need to
Yes.
get regularly, and so government being the biggest customers, which means going forward as well. Earlier, the government was the biggest provider too, but now big government is the biggest, I think, customer, which needs more of enterprise level of information system and assurity and regularity of the continuity of the information coming in. So that's going to be a big opportunity for the space sector globally. But how does it actually enhance? There are many countries which may not have the space capabilities in terms of the technology transfer or technology, but they do have those ambitions and aspirations to have these sovereign assets. So, do you think India as playing a role into countries like Africa or Southeast Asia in terms of providing reliable, cheaper, and more regionally developed technologies in future, Kranti?
Well, I think it's a give and take relationship, right? At the end of the day, today, when you look at the whole market, there's too many players who are offering, say, CubeSats. Universities build CubeSats, so which means
Okay.
that the technology barrier has come down. So it's like there is a difference between a predator drone manufacturing versus a normal drone manufacturing. So you'll have the similar use cases develop within the space industry where development of anything below 50 kilogram class will become pretty common standard across multiple countries, and the difference maker in terms of retaining technology edge over other countries is going to be on the kind of accuracy levels in which you can have the data processing chain, because of the big data analytics that you can bring in as your own country's assets. A lot of countries cannot bring in the same ground level sensors into the picture to make sense of the Earth observation data coming in. So I think those will be the difference makers. So it will be a different kind of technology transfer that you'll be looking at, an open ecosystem where countries can build something to show that they are developing and have an understanding of what needs to be. But you don't need to go all the way. An example is, like Soumya said, you might require a daily revisit 200 satellite constellation, but no country requires it to be dedicated to their own country. If you at least have 10 satellites and the rest you're willing to collaborate with other countries, you get it. So that will be a collaborator model that will also evolve after a base layer is made.
So Kranti, I got it. So here you look at, when you're looking at technology sharing to some extent and licensing the whole information system, you also need a lot of bilateral political environment for that, or multilateral political environment. So the role of the government in terms of the trade and commerce is going to be very, very critical. So what do you think about Setu, about the role of government into facilitating these kind of collaborations, which are very strategic of nature? You just can't go and buy it off the shelf.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, role of government becomes quite critical. But just before that, I mean, I have a slightly different view than what Kranti said. I do believe that we are fast evolving into a very discrete, globally very discrete, right? So at least in the near future, for me, it's very difficult to foresee when nations can afford. It's very difficult for me to foresee that such kind of alliances will form, and it'll be largely driven by nation interest. And there is today a large emphasis, even in very small countries in Europe, to control, own the whole data and not share those resources to elsewhere. But maybe we'll have to see how that kind of ecosystem would evolve. And in terms of role of the government, I mean, government plays a very critical part. Just as an example, right? Like I could take being very not bipartisan or non-bipartisan. Like India has been in the last decade or so has really grown in terms of its reputation globally, both in terms of technology, the space technology, and also India's really built. Traditionally has this built this being at the forefront when it comes to the human resources. So in that sense, I think India's, given the topic is around India, I think India's fairly well positioned to be the global exporter of the technology. Because let's say even now today when we are talking with countries where they want technology transfer, these countries don't want technology being transferred from every country, right? Like for example, if I'm just
Yeah,
taking an
exactly.
example, like if I'm talking to Sweden as Finland, so they could buy from Finland much more easier than they could buy from India or someone else. So I think India is really in a good position where they could leverage their soft power that they have built over a decade to transport these kind of technologies.
So, in nutshell, what we are seeing is that there's a great opportunity for the space revolution in India, both as a market as well as the source to serve to the global ecosystem. But at the same time, it's very important to have the bilateral and multilateral relationships being facilitated by the government of India to bring that commonality of goals, commonality of ideologies. So more and more collaboration we will see between the countries with having similar kind of the political forms of governance and similar kind of approaches to the global development agenda. So with this note, I would like to thank our panelists, Kranti. Thank you very much, Soumya and Setu, for joining this conversation. We look forward to have more conversations in coming weeks. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Great talking to meeting everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you,
for the
Sanjay.
attention.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. Thank you.
everyone. Welcome to GW Bulletin. This is Bert Claessens, VP Europe, your newscaster for today. Atlantis and a subsidiary of Encino Environmental Services, leaders in methane leak detection and quantification, have furthered their partnership by sealing one of the largest contracts within the small sat industry. This alliance aims to monitor infrastructure for high-resolution visual applications and methane emission detection through satellite technology. Under the agreement, Encino has acquired exclusive rights to data from all orbits that cover North America and parts of South America from the Atlantis VSAT precursor satellite to monitor customer assets across various sectors, including oil and gas, biogas, landfills, power infrastructure, and for broad visual data needs. SkyFi, a marketplace for Earth observation data and analytics, has announced a strategic partnership with True Elements, a pioneering water intelligence company providing water data analytics and forecasting. True Elements' state-of-the-art water intelligence capabilities provide comprehensive assessment of water quality, quantity, and watershed health. Designed to help decision makers understand and address material water risks, identify opportunities, and empower climate adaptation strategies, the system stands as the first of its kind tailored for enterprise application. True Elements Water Intelligence System aggregates, synthesizes, and transforms complex water data into clear visualizations and climate insights. This deeper intelligence into water dynamics aids in proactive risk management, ensuring that adaptation efforts are grounded in precise, real-time data, scientific analysis, and AI-driven forecasting. By equipping decision makers with True Elements localized water intelligence insights, alongside SkyFi's satellite imagery, decision makers have a more complete, multidimensional view of their specific situation with greater context and deeper understanding of current and future water risks, as well as opportunities. Eutelsat Group has launched Low Earth Orbit Services in Antarctica for British Antarctic Survey, BAS, a world-leading center for polar science and polar operations. The technology will match the high data use needs of the scientific activities at the research outpost in Antarctica, along with the connectivity needs of the staff based at the stations. In order to deliver services to the Antarctic region, Eutelsat OneWeb developed a proprietary system named Teleria, which was made with the support of the European Space Agency Sunrise Partnership Project, Comtech Telecommunications Corps, and Cobham Satcom, and their partners for the development and implementation of the ground infrastructure solution. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and Japan's Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, Masahito Moriyama, have signed an agreement to advance sustainable human exploration of the moon. Japan will design, develop, and operate a pressurized rover for crewed and uncrewed exploration on the moon. NASA will provide the launch and delivery of the rover to the moon, as well as 2 opportunities for Japanese astronauts to travel to the surface of the moon. The pressurized lunar rover is intended to enable astronauts to travel further and work for longer periods on the lunar surface. The US Space Force released its commercial space strategy yesterday, with details how the service is retooling processes and cultivating commercial partnerships to increase US competitive advantage. The commercial space strategy aligns with the Department of Defense Commercial Space Integration Strategy released earlier this month. The strategy signals a fundamental mind shift for the Space Force and how it supports the Joint Force. The service will institutionalize and operationalize commercial capabilities by integrating space goods, services, and activities. Thank you.